Okay, thank you for your patience. This is part two now, so that just makes it easier on the videos to have to break it down that way. After an hour, YouTube kind of gets temperamental. In this slide, you'll see it says focusing on proven reliable best practices. This right here says proven drills, lockdowns, evacuations. That's something that the research says is very important. I'm going to show you a video on school safety video for drills that shows you how those definitely work, and reaching out to non-traditional community partners, conducting tabletop and mini tabletop exercises. What that means, tabletop and mini tabletop exercises, is sitting down and brainstorming what happens in this situation. Not just to have a book that says, if this happens, we go here, but actually brainstorming and saying, well, what occurs with this? Now let me go ahead and show you this video on safety videos.
Every day all across America, millions of children attend public and private schools, learning, laughing, and interacting in relative security and safety. But every so often, that vibrant learning environment is shattered by a horrific tragedy. In response to these events, schools have made an effort to address similar situations by planning and practicing lockdown emergency drills. The goal of these drills is to get the students into a secure place as quickly as possible. In most instances, this is the classroom. There are three main steps of a lockdown emergency plan. Step number one is to close and lock the classroom door. Step number two is to cover the door window into the hallway. Step number three is to gather all the students in the least visible and most secure area of the classroom.
Everything's just fine.
Teachers have expressed concerns with the lockdown procedures. First, they must locate their keys, an action that takes several seconds of precious time. Then they must open the door and in most cases go out into the hall in order to lock the door. This action potentially puts their students and themselves at additional risk from an intruder. With fire code requiring unobstructed egress from the classroom, doors cannot lock from the inside without a specially designed lock. SchoolSafe was developed as an effective yet inexpensive alternative to securing a classroom door from the inside. SchoolSafe is a door anti-latching device that installs quickly and easily to the door or jamb and allows the door to close but not latch. There are no elaborate or complicated procedures for using SchoolSafe. When teachers enter the school in the morning, they open their door and lock it, and then engage the SchoolSafe device so that the door will not latch. Because the door does not latch, the door can remain locked throughout the day. With SchoolSafe installed, students and teachers can enter and exit classrooms easily all day long, without even having to turn the door handle. If there is an emergency, the device can be triggered with a flip of a lever inside the classroom, allowing the door to latch, thereby locking the door. This is how a lockdown would look using SchoolSafe. Notice how there is no need to locate classroom keys. The door can be locked quickly with just a flip of the SchoolSafe lever. This allows the teacher to focus on directing the children. During a lockdown, this is how a hallway would look to an intruder if the school was not equipped with SchoolSafe. And now, the same hallway during a lockdown of a school using SchoolSafe. With no hallway exposure, students and teachers remain safe behind locked doors. SchoolSafe can save precious seconds when time matters most. It eliminates hallway exposure. It allows doors to be locked quickly from the inside. And it is inexpensive and easy to install. What do people have to say about SchoolSafe?
With SchoolSafe, as a teacher and as a parent, it gives me a sense of security in knowing that if we should need to lock down the building quickly, all I need to do is flip a switch and I don't have to go rummaging across my desk to find my keys.
I think SchoolSafe and Global Innovations, with their development of this product, is very intriguing to me because it provides a cost-effective way for school districts to be able to address their lockdown procedure issues with the advent of 9/11 and all the other terrorist-type incidents such as Columbine. It's a very high priority for the school districts, and that becomes problematic for the fire service for us to gain entrance and egress into individual classrooms because of lockdown situations. I think it's a good compromise on both ends of it to where they can provide that lockdown capability, but we can also mitigate our search and rescue from a life safety standpoint in a much faster way.
As we work with the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department on our safety plan, I was very pleased when one of our local firemen came over and met with me and talked about this product because it showed me that it was something that was not only supported by our school but also supported by the agencies that support our school in an emergency.
When SchoolSafe staff came to me, they gave me the device to look at, and the first thing I noticed was how simple it was. It's not a big mechanical device. It's very small. It rotates. It's easy to use, and there's no moving parts. Again, under stress, people's motor skills tend to diminish. And with this device, it's very easy to implement. It's always in the same place. It rotates very easily, and it's perfect for a lockdown situation.
When I talk to parents about SchoolSafe, I find that they are very excited knowing that our school has taken this step to protect their children.
Budgetary concerns are a big thing nowadays, especially in schools, businesses. So this device is exceptional when you think about what it affords, the safety of the kids, the safety in the workplace, and just the amount of money you're going to put out to get this device and install it is very minimal.
I was really pleased to find out that the SchoolSafe, in a very large school such as ours, for just a couple of $100, we've got all of the classrooms are in a safe mode when we need to lock down.
This next slide talks about policy and funding, and in this guy's presentation he talks about how different elements such as local, state, and federal try to advocate through grants and money situations to help people get safe rooms and get better security. This has actually become a big thing in Oklahoma with tornadoes. This new company has emerged and they are creating these safe rooms inside schools. You'll see a lot of these online, and they're selling them around here in Meridian as well. But what they are is they're anchored. They bring in a storm house into your house, and they anchor it to your foundation. There has been some debate on whether these are extremely safe or just safe. The reason I say that is the general practice has been an L5 tornado. To survive that, you need to be underground. But you can have a safe room in your house if this, so what people are doing now is they're building homes and they're laying their foundation slab and they're putting a concrete box attached. Pretty much, it's part of your foundation slab. So the research shows that those are safe for an L5 tornado, but it's kind of up in the air on that one. But it is anchored in the foundation. I don't know why it wouldn't be safe. So what these companies are doing is they are creating the box because your foundation is already created and it's already been laid, and they're bringing these boxes into your house for $5,000 to $7,000 called safe rooms, and they're anchoring them into your foundation. Now their argument is these are just as safe for an L5 tornado. The counter to that is it's only as strong as those bolts, and I don't know the tension pressure on those bolts, and they would come back with that. There's been limited research on the safe rooms and if they can survive an L5 tornado, but they're better than nothing, definitely, for sure. I would advise an underground storm shelter, obviously, and the second thing would be a above ground panic room, safe room that's poured into your foundation, and then the safe room box if you've already had your foundation in place. This next video is showing you what this slide is talking about in federal money, and that is this company has created these huge safe rooms for schools, and they're trying to get federal FEMA money, Homeland Security, and money like that to help pay for these. So this is a pretty good video showing these boxes that are used.
The storm shelter, it's bulletproof, and what if we told you it could soon be in classrooms across the country? Jodion Thompson was in a Harrisonville school as they tested it today. Curious, Jodion, what do teachers think about this?
Well, Krista, so far it's getting some pretty good reviews from teachers, and we know many schools will be starting school next week, but none of us have forgotten Moore, Oklahoma, and the tornado that ripped through an elementary school there. And then there was Sandy Hook Elementary that was attacked by a gunman. Now, these national events inspired a Missouri team of engineers to find a solution. And after several different designs, they think they may have.
There we go.
It's been shot at with an AK-47 and armor-piercing rounds from a .30-06. No bullets penetrated the steel. And even wooden 2x4s have been blasted at the outside of this shelter at F5 tornado wind speeds. Today, students got to grade the hideaway shelter.
In case of emergencies, we don't have to run somewhere.
It was tested in a classroom for the first time at Harrisonville Christian School, both as a tornado shelter and as a bulletproof refuge. The hideaway shelter bolts to the ground and expands from 17 inches wide to a space large enough for 30 students. Second grade teacher Michelle Sloan is happy with it.
A lot of responsibility that we think of as teachers, and what do we do to keep our students as safe as we can, and right now it just feels like our best isn't good enough.
Company president Mike Vogt and his team of engineers designed it.
This is a new concept completely. There is nothing else like this.
And he hopes FEMA will help pay for them. This shelter cost about $15,000, but the interest is also coming from more than just schools.
On the Mexican border for businesses looking for protection from drug cartels. Could this go in embassies around the world to protect the people that are inside the embassies?
Back at the plant in Harrisonville, production is ready to start. And the shelters can be built at different sizes, so that changes the cost. The easiest way, they say, to calculate it is it runs about $1,600, that is, dollars a student. Live in the studio, Jodion Thompson, 41 Action News.
All right, so that is kind of a wave of the future at $600 a student. That's a very hefty price tag, but some schools are doing that, and that would be an interesting approach to both school safety as it relates to weather and school safety as it relates to protection for active shooters. This next slide talks about policy and funding things to avoid. High-level, low-impact conversations. That's when everyone says we need to all have a meeting, everyone gets together, they have all the big wigs, everyone sits there, and then nothing really comes back from that. We just meet to meet. Fads that feel good, no practical implementation. The book talks, this article talks about this in a minute. It talks about how everyone rushed to after Newtown, everyone raced to get security doors. But security doors are not the solution. Drills and security doors are the solution. Remember, Newtown had a security door, and one reason that there was less loss of life was that there was a huge amount. Everyone followed the drill, and you'll see that in this next article. And so Newtown was effectively locked down in a couple of minutes. Overly prescriptive versus local flexibility, which means having a book that says if this happens, we do this. There needs to be some flexibility to do that. Do something for the sake of doing something and do it fast. This is something that doesn't work well. We need to have a plan. We need to have a plan now. We really need to think this out. Get people involved on this. As you go to the next slide, state policy and funding, investing in people, and it talks about different organizations. State policy again, crisis plans, improving training. It also mentions this again. It talks about communication and mental health. Mental health is a big element for that, and we see that some of our students are suffering demons, and but we always said the parents should be responsible for the mental health observation of the student. That is generally not the case all the time. This next video is very interesting because it shows you one of the Columbine's mothers and her perception of how her child was dealing with demons and how she didn't even see it. On the opposite end, the school saw some of it in their essays that he was doing, and his friends saw it and the police saw it when they arrested him, but the mother never saw it. So this is a kind of a longer video. It really shows you how a parent can miss out on some of the mental health issues that's possessing her child.
And it's hard to believe it was 17 years ago a nation watched the horror unfold at Columbine High School. The student escaping from that broken window, other students fleeing, their hands in the air, and the yearbook photos of the two gunmen. On the right there, Dylan Klebold. And tonight, for the first time ever, Klebold's mother is now breaking her silence about warning signs missed, about a life in hiding for 17 years. Here's Diane Sawyer with her exclusive.
The police were there and the helicopters were going over. And I remember thinking, if this is true, if Dylan is really hurting people, somehow he has to be stopped. And that at that moment I prayed that he would die, that God, stop this, just make it stop. Don't let him hurt anybody.
And so her quest begins. She says she goes back over every year of her life with a magnifying glass, looking for the path of her son's descent and the clues that she missed.
Sometimes he would seem, distant or quiet, and I remember asking him, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? You seem so tired," and he'd stand up and say, "I've got a lot of homework, I need to go to bed."
And you let it go. And
I let it go. And that's the difference. If it were me today, I would dig and dig and dig. I felt that I was a good mom, that he could talk to me about anything. Part of the shock of this was that learning that what I believed and how I lived and how I parented was an invention in my own mind, that it was a completely different world that he was living in.
She says not a day goes by she doesn't think of the victims and their families.
I just remember sitting there and reading about them. All these kids and the teacher. And I keep thinking, constantly thought, how I would feel if it were the other way around and one of their children had shot mine. I would feel exactly the way they did. I know I would. I know I would.
Look at a kind of class picture. Can you pick out which ones will grow up to be school shooters? Almost 2/3 will be from two-parent homes. Nearly half of the kids will do well in school. 73% of them will never have been arrested before. And yet every child you see here will become a school shooter. In total, murdering 67 people. The child in this picture is Dylan Klebold. In her book, his mother writes, he wasn't the pinwheel-eyed portrait of evil we know from cartoons. He was shy, likable, with hands-on parents
who put them to bed with stories and prayers and hugs.
The Klebolds, the family who lived in this house in the foothills of the Rockies. Their two sons named after famous poets. Sue Klebold calls Dylan her shiny penny. In gifted classes, loved Little League, gave big hugs and kisses, and built tall ships out of Legos.
And he wouldn't just work on one puzzle, he'd dump them all into a big mountain so that he could solve 5 or 6 of them at the same time.
Sue Klebold says he was easily embarrassed, tearful and hard on himself if he made a mistake. He's shy heading into adolescence.
He talked about looking weird. He was a tall, gawky kid with glasses.
But he has friends, goes out to parties, Friday night bowling. She says some of his friends decide it's cool to look different from the jocks. They buy long black coats.
But didn't you wonder why he wanted a trench coat? What was that about? Well, I was the kind of kid who loved to look different. I mean, I was an art major.
She says she does notice something, that Dylan seems to be losing interest in good grades. He builds his own computer and spends more time alone in his room. And sometimes he's moody and irritable. But she now says, as she looks back over her life, she is making a big mistake. Her son is changing, but she writes off the changes as an adolescent phase.
Sometimes he would seem, distant or quiet. And I remember asking him, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? You seem so tired." And he'd stand up and say, "I've got a lot of homework. I need to go to bed."
And you let it go.
And I let it go. And that's the difference. I would dig, if it were me today, I would dig and dig and dig. I mean, I had all those illusions that everything was okay because, and more than anything else, because my love for him was so strong. I felt that I was a good mom, that he could talk to me about anything. Part of the shock of this was that learning that what I believed and how I lived and how I parented was an invention in my own mind.
She says she hopes other parents watching tonight will think about what a child can be hiding. It's the summer after Dylan's sophomore year, long before Columbine. She has a journal, and in it she's writing, "Things have been really happy this summer. Dylan is yucking it up, having a great time with friends." She has no idea her 15-year-old son has begun a secret journal of his own. And his first entry is this: thinking of suicide. "I hate my life. I want to die. I have a nice family, good house, couple of good friends, no girls. Nobody accepting me, even though I want to be accepted." He plays the Nine Inch Nails song Hurt and makes a list of all the people he loves who will never love him back.
Dylan?
You can see him in this video, his junior year at Columbine. He seems self-conscious, a little wistful, but talks about the future, the classes he'll take to help get into college.
So, you get better chances after high school as far as college goes? Maybe a scholarship?
Okay, let me ask you this. Are you an independent learner or group learner?
Probably independent.
But at this point, we want to be very clear. 80 to 90% of depression can be treated. And even suicidal depression is not an explanation or a pathway to violence. But Dr. Gregory Fritz, president of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, wants to warn parents tonight that suicidal depression is real and can strike any teen, anywhere.
Somewhere between 15 and 20% of high school kids say that they have thought about suicide in the past year.
Let me repeat, 15 to 20% of adolescents seriously consider suicide, and that's at least one child in every American classroom. Every 95 minutes, a young person will take their life. Fritz says a lot of loving parents can miss something serious, sure that changes are just a phase.
I've felt that as a parent myself, just, oh, please don't let it be so. I don't want to see it. Won't this go away? It's just a phase. The good news is, oftentimes it is. It can lead us to have blind spots.
On the internet, thousands of kids make secret confessions. A teenage girl who seems to smile.
Just like this eternal sadness.
A high school star who says teenagers are better than adults at hiding depression. They're so afraid of the stigma.
If you were to look at my life on the surface, you'd see a kid who was the captain of his basketball team, consistently on the honor roll and consistently at every party. You would say I wasn't suicidal, but you'd be wrong.
Later in this broadcast, we'll tell you more about spotting teenage depression. Dr. Fritz taking questions online. But more than 17 years ago, Sue Klebold says she knew so little about teen depression, thinking the big problem in her house was her older son grappling with drugs.
Were you distracted? Well, of course, because we're human. I mean, we all have things that distract us. She can't say I was too busy to notice that my son was falling apart.
And heading down a path of destruction.
Could you have prevented what happened to Columbine?
If I had recognized that Dylan was experiencing some real mental distress, he would not have been there. He would have gotten help. I don't ever for a moment mean to imply that I'm not conscious of the fact that he was a killer, because I am.
A year and a half before the Columbine massacre, her son is a junior, a series of troubling events. He hacks into the school computer system with some friends. They're all suspended for 3 days. He scratches an epithet on the locker of a kid he thinks is taunting him. Then the big shock. On the same day he makes that video talking about his future, he and another kid break into a van, steal electronic equipment, and police make an arrest.
This is a felony. Two
It was
felony
terrible,
counts.
I know, absolutely. It was awful. And at the time, I thought that was the worst thing I could ever possibly experience.
Dylan's cold reaction after the arrest scared and shocked her. He acted as if he had done nothing wrong. She says she gave him one of her lectures, trying to reason with him.
I even talked about the 10 Commandments. I said it's wrong to steal under no circumstances is this right. And then we responded as most parents would. We took away privileges.
She says a lot of days he was affectionate, planning for the future, applying to colleges. She didn't know he was writing in his journal how he wanted to get a gun to use on a poor SOB himself. One night, she's frustrated. He's not doing chores. He's withdrawn. She thinks he needs more discipline. She pushes him against the refrigerator.
And I said, you know, you've got to stop thinking of yourself. You've got to stop being so selfish. But, excuse me, but I gave him the old mom lecture. And then I said, and by the way, today's Mother's Day and you forgot it. And I don't remember how that confrontation ended. I just remember he softly said, Mom, please don't push me. I don't know how much I can control myself. It wasn't a scary thing. It was just him being nice to say, back off, please.
She says she blamed herself for pushing him too far.
And then he went out and he got me a gift. It was a little watering can with African violets in it. And I thought everything was fine because he was so sweet.
And inside, on his way to becoming a mass shooter. And there is no way to continue telling this story without going back to another little face in that class picture. A friend who was with him breaking into the van, Eric Harris.
An ABC News exclusive with the mother of one of the Columbine killers. 17 years ago, Sue Klebold's son, Dylan, and his friend Eric Harris murdered 13 people. Now she is speaking out, sharing her story in her new book, A Mother's Reckoning, and also sharing her story with our Diane, who sat down with her for her first ever TV interview that is airing tonight in a 2020 special. 17 years ago.
17 years.
For some, it seems like just yesterday.
Right, but we have got to try to learn something. Got to try to learn something both for our own lives and our own children, but also to protect against the next school shooting.
And so we're going to see how it's still very raw for her to step forward and to speak out.
Thinking all the time of the families, as we did. We reached out to the families beforehand. We're going to be reaching out to them again afterwards. But she says not a day goes by that she doesn't think of what happened and that what they're living with every day.
I just remember sitting there and reading about them. All these kids and the teacher. And I keep thinking, constantly thought, how I would feel if it were the other way around and one of their children had shot mine. I would feel exactly the way they did. I know I would. I know I would.
So she says she went back over her life with a magnifying glass to look for everything she missed, the questions she didn't ask, the things she made assumptions about that she should not have made assumptions about, but it was 17 years ago before Columbine. And she was just trying to come up with lessons, clues for everybody sitting at home.
Does she feel that she missed some of those
Big
signs
ones.
with her son?
Big ones, and a progression of things. She goes back along the path, and some of them will relate, I think, to all families. I think we'll be asking ourselves, is adolescent behavior just adolescent behavior, or is it something else? And you know, the other thing that happens with her, and you'll see it a bit here, she's trapped in this contradiction between the little boy and all she believed he could be and the murderer he became. And she's still a mother thinking about that little boy and what might have been different.
There is never a day that goes by where I don't think of the people that Dylan harmed. And
You use the word harm.
Harmed. I think it's easier for me to say harmed than killed. And it's still hard for me after all this time.
Is that about a certain need to deny what happened, or?
I don't know, perhaps. It is very hard to live with the fact that someone you loved and raised has brutally killed people in such a horrific way. I think we like to believe that our love and our understanding is protective, and that if anything were wrong with my kids, I would know. But I didn't know. And it's very hard to live with that.
She says she now knows her mistake, not considering that an adolescent phase can, in fact, signal something else.
So I felt that I was a good mom, that he could talk to me about anything. Part of the shock of this was that learning that what I believed and how I lived and how I parented was an invention in my own mind, that it was a complete...
I want to skip ahead a little bit. I want to make this PDF available, but I want to skip ahead a little bit and show you this part of the article, which says that there's 10 lessons learned from the Sandy Hook school shootings. And instead of reading all these, you can read these, but I will hit the main points. Number one is the need to invest in training and preparing our students and staff for safety. And it even says that the school custodian ran through the building, alerting teachers to lock down as he helped lock the classrooms. Teachers and aides in 2 classrooms died when with their children, but the office staff minimized their visibility as shots were being fired. Number 2 was it stresses again the staff locked down. And while 26 students and staff sadly lost their lives at Sandy Hook, many lives were saved due to students and staff locking down. The final report indicated that the first 2 rooms where the murders took place, the teachers were unable to lock down that fast. And that's why they were unable to lock down. It wasn't their fault, it was just so fast. But the other classrooms were able to lock down. It says the principal told everyone to stay put, not to run or attack the gunman, and one shot staff member made it back in the conference room, locked down, called 911, and activated the PA. It also says right here that the idea that we should attack the gunman counters the lockdown mentality. And in fact, one of the staff members was shot, I believe, and went and locked down and survived. But meanwhile, the people who attacked not really attacked, but went towards the gunfire, which was the principal and another secretary, they were killed. So this article stresses over and over and over again the need to effectively lock down. And that they even said that he went by one room that was locked down and did not try to get in there. And but in credit to the school, one of the classrooms had paper on the window where the teacher had been practicing on the lockdown before, so they had drilled so much that they knew how to lock down. Prior lockdown drills were reportedly held at Sandy Hook, which surely helped the many staff quickly to do so. It said also, remove the building's leadership team. Remove the principal, remove your crisis interventionist, and see how the teachers react then. So 1 through 5 continue stressing the idea of practicing the lockdown drills. Let's see, on number 6, assess physical security. The classrooms where children and staff died at Sandy Hook had connecting doors in the walls, restrooms inside the classrooms. So you need to look at your physical layout of your school and say which doors can be bolted, which doors can be easier to lock down. It says number 7, strengthen communications redundancy. That, for example, the teachers were allowed to get on the PA system in each one of their classrooms, not push the call button to talk to just the office, but be able to talk to the whole school. So that actually helped because it'll help people communicate the lockdown faster. But also on the opposite end, the police department's radios did not work inside the school. So this stresses the need for schools to be able to practice. They need to practice their radios inside the school to make sure they work to start with. Think and act cognitively, not emotionally. Don't get upset when something happens. Now, that does not mean don't get upset when shootings occur. It means it goes back to that previous post. It means don't say we need to spend $15,000 on these security safe rooms, which we saw in a previous video, and completely ignore drilling, completely ignore the conversations. Don't just throw money at a solution, which needs to be addressed through a roundtable discussion, but also goes back to don't have just discussions to have discussions, actually try to get through and solve this. Number 10, it talks about many schools avoid knee-jerk reactions. Many schools rush to fortify their front doors, failing to recognize the need to drill is always a key. So this article just stresses over and over and over again the need to drill, the need to stress that. And I agree with that drilling definitely works. And the next article, as you slide through, it talks about schools facing a new wave of violent threats. This continues from his previous post about social media, so he brings this up now this article just replicates what he said in that slide. It talks about the 317 15 cases with 17 threats that were online were actually real. So you can read this, but we've already covered this section right here. This last section is 10 key points to remember about safety. It says the first and best line of defense is a well-trained, highly alert staff. Children want and need order. Deal with small problems, whether they're small problems. A crisis plan left on a shelf is not a good crisis plan. So look at these 10 key points to remember. That definitely will help you. This next page talks about act for parents, and that really kicks in with the Columbine killer's mother who talked about this. This is really good. Ask your child about safety at his or her school. Are y'all practicing? Examine access to school. Talk to your principal about that. Who's being allowed in and out. Inquire about public safety. So these are really good. This last 2 pages are really good points for any parent or any, in fact, if a teacher wanted to say, I've got questions about my school, and just look at that. So this last little video that I'm going to add to this will be the actual 60-minute piece that I told you I was going to show you about the Columbine shooting. I'm sorry, about the Newtown shooting. And that's the whole, it's going to talk to you, it's got a secretary in there who's sheltered in place, and they did the safety words, and it's going to really give you an idea of what's inside. So this whole lecture was about school safety, and just on different elements as well, between weather but the occurring theme as I researched this over and over and over again was drilling. You've got to practice. You need to practice. But there needs to be a reasonable element on how much you practice. Do you need to practice this with students and stress them out psychologically? But students need to know what to do. There needs to be a balance. So definitely think about that as you watch this final video.
It's a Sunday of sorrow for Newtown, Connecticut, and for the nation. This afternoon, hundreds of residents walked the road to Sandy Hook Elementary School, where on Friday, 26 people were murdered, 20 of them children, in the first grade. President Obama has been in Newtown tonight for a memorial service. First reports of this tragedy have turned out to be inaccurate. We were told that the gunman's mother was a teacher at the school, that he was allowed in because he was recognized, and that he targeted his mother's classroom with 2 handguns. Tonight, we know that all of that is wrong. Here's what we do know. As told by people who knew the gunman and by one woman at the school that he approached but did not kill.
The story will continue in a moment.
That woman is Sally Cox, the school nurse. This picture was taken shortly after she left Sandy Hook Elementary on Friday. She's been the school nurse there 15 years, and she told us that Friday morning began with comforting routine. 9:10, Pledge of Allegiance. 9:15, outside doors locked. Then came 9:30.
All of a sudden I heard very loud popping noise. I mean, a noise that I've never ever heard before. And my first thought was this something with the heating system, or did something fall? And I called out to the secretary, "Barb, what is that?" And then she called out to me by name. She said, "Sally." And I could just hear like fear in her voice.
It was something about the way Barb called out your name?
Yes. Yeah. She just had this horrible sound of fear in her voice. That's what made me just, because I think I was about ready to go to see what was going on. The popping kept going off, and I just dove underneath my computer desk. The back of the desk has a small opening for like wires to come out, and I just peeked. I could see his feet and his legs from the knees down, and his feet were facing in my direction. And I just froze with fear. And then it was just seconds, and then he turned around and I could hear him walk out. I heard the door close, and then I just heard popping starting all over again. And then the secretary, she was down behind my desk, and we pulled the phone off the desk, and she called 911.
And she said what?
She said, "We have a shoot. Please send help right away. We have a shooter in the building." And then we just wanted to get out of there. And then we just ran into my big supply closet, and we ran into the closet. We pulled that door closed, so we were behind two locked doors, and we could just hear the popping continue, and we heard screams. There's nothing we could do, It was just a helpless, horrible feeling, and just like a nightmare that couldn't believe that. I just think it's a bad dream. After some time, I think it was about 11:15, so we had been in that closet for about an hour and a half. I opened the door and I peeked out, because my office has a lot of windows and looks into the courtyard. And I just saw what looked like maybe SWAT people, but I didn't know, who they were. I didn't know if there were other shooters. And it wasn't until about 1:15 when somebody was jiggling the door, and but nobody called out. So I decided to be brave enough and open that door into the office, and a lot of state police officers were there at that point, and they were very surprised to see me.
You were in the closet for about 4 hours.
Close to it, yeah. Just fearful.
I wonder what the standard security at the school is in terms of allowing visitors into the building and that sort of thing. How is it supposed to work?
We do our Pledge of Allegiance at 9:10, and then 5 minutes later, the doors are locked. All the doors all going around the whole building. And then when people come, they have to buzz. There's a camera. They push a button. It buzzes in the office, and we buzz them in.
How long has that been true?
4 or 5 years.
The gunman had shot out a window to get past the locked door. From the start, Sally Cox told us the teachers and the kids went immediately into the lockdown that they had practiced and practiced. Children were trained to go under their desks in events like these.
Yeah. And we have different kinds of drills. Not in addition to fire drills and high wind drills and lockdown drills and evacuation drills. So we've done it. We've been doing it. Each month it's something different.
So you've done those kinds of things fairly recently.
Just recently, yep. Yes. Yeah.
At some point you left the school,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder in that journey from your office through the door, What did you see?
They told me to close my eyes. They took my arm and they guided me out. They said, "We'll guide you out. We want you to close your eyes until we get to the parking lot." I don't know what was there that they didn't want me to see, but they told me to close my eyes.
And that's what you did?
That's what I did. Yeah.
The officers spared her the sight of the bodies of 20 first graders, 4 teachers, the school psychologist, the principal, and the killer. 20-year-old Adam Lanza lived in town nearly all his life, but he left few impressions. Olivia DeVivo sat behind Lanza in 10th grade honors English.
Yeah, he carried a briefcase to every class, and that stood out to me because in high school everyone has backpacks and, you know, messenger bags, and that stood out to a lot of kids.
It also stood out that Lanza was uncomfortable when asked to speak in class.
He just would get very nervous, and, you know, his face would turn bright red, and he would get very fidgety, and you could just tell that it wasn't that he didn't know the answer, it's just that it was very difficult for him to say what he wanted to say.
Did he have a reputation for being a smart kid?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can just tell by the way he was in class. He was always appeared to be very attentive and focused.
How would you describe him socially?
He must have really felt uncomfortable in any kind of social situation because he never really put himself out there, and I just don't really remember him ever, you know, stepping forward or really saying anything. It was just he wanted to be left alone, and we left him alone.
She doesn't remember Lanza after that, maybe because he wasn't going to the high school full-time. Family friends told us that he was being homeschooled by his mother, Nancy Lanza. Nancy Lanza told her friends Mark and Louise Tambascio that Adam was brilliant but disabled. Did Nancy Lanza ever tell you specifically what her son's medical condition was? Did she put a name to it?
Asperger's.
That's what she said?
Yes.
That it was Asperger's syndrome?
Absolutely. There's no question.
And for her, it was a full-time job,
Absolutely.
Taking care of him.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Asperger's syndrome is a disorder within the spectrum of autism. It's characterized by social impairment, communication difficulty, and repetitive patterns of behavior. An Asperger's support group told us today that patients are more prone to be victims of violence than the perpetrators of violence, and we don't know whether Asperger's played any role in the shootings. But friends told us that the condition did dominate the Lanza's lives.
I mean, I know he was on medication and everything. She was, you know, but she homeschooled him at home because he couldn't deal with the school classes sometimes. So she just homeschooled him at home. And that was her life.
She wasn't working. She devoted her time to Adam.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. She didn't have to work, so that's what she did. She homeschooled him, and you know, and she did a lot of charitable work and everything.
Nancy Lanza appeared well off, living with her son in an upscale home. She was 52, divorced in 2009, with another older son. In town, they say she was friendly and generous, donating time and money to charities. Nancy Lanza also made a hobby of shooting sports. She owned several guns. A friend said that she'd grown up that way on a farm in New Hampshire.
Yeah, she liked to target shoot. You know, she got into it, I think, in the last few years or so. She really enjoyed it. But yeah, she was advocate. She really got into it and loved it.
The guns Adam Lanza carried into the school, a rifle and 2 pistols like these, were all legal, registered to his mother under Connecticut laws, which are among the strictest in the nation. The murder weapon was a semi-automatic variation on the M16 assault rifle. It fires 1 round with each pull of the trigger. The first victim Friday was Nancy Lanza. Police say they found her lying in bed, shot in the face. They also discovered the computers in the home had been smashed to bits. An FBI lab is trying to recover documents from the hard drives now, and investigators will subpoena the Lanza's emails and text messages from service providers. Motive is still a mystery. But if anyone can begin to understand an attack like this, it's Robert Fine and Brian Voskuil. In 1999, they went into prisons to interview and study assassins and would-be assassins for the U.S. Secret Service.
They're going in, they're going in.
Then, in 2002, the Secret Service published their follow-up study on 37 school shooters. Robert, you've been speaking to people who are involved in the investigation at the highest levels, and I wonder what they're telling you about these early days.
Fundamentally, what I hear is that this is a very complicated case, a very difficult, painful case that's going to take a long time to really unravel and understand.
What are they saying about precedents and how this compares?
On the continuum of lone offender attacks, this case is described as way out there on the continuum in terms of awfulness.
They discovered that most attackers followed a discernible pattern of behavior for weeks or even months before the attack. They call it the pathway to violence. How does this pathway to violence manifest itself? What is it that people can look for in a person who is on this pathway, as you describe it?
People who engaged in these attacks took a series of actions, as in often selecting a particular weapon, sometimes practicing with a weapon. They thought, I'm desperate. They accepted the idea that violence might be an acceptable way to solve their problems.
In how many cases did the shooter tell someone essentially what he was planning on doing before he did it?
In almost all of them, the student who committed the attack, the school shooter, communicated in many instances his intent to commit the attack.
The events of Friday struck fear into the heart of every parent who sends a child to school all across this country. I wonder what you would tell the folks at home who worry, can I send my kid to school on Monday?
It is important to remember that these are extremely, extremely rare events.
Any event as horrible as the attack of last Friday scares everybody. But the reality in this country is that schools have been and are safer and have become much safer over the last several years.
Yesterday in Newtown, they released the names of the lost. We were surprised when school nurse Sally Cox told us that she was making a point of not hearing them. Not all at once, anyway. Better to take 26 blows, one at a time.